Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 470 and my guest is Sadie Dingfelder. Sadie, who's a journalist, lives in an eternal present. She was born with an extremely rare combination of fascinating brain differences, including severely deficient autobiographical memory, faceblindness, aphantasia, meaning she can't visualize mental images, stereoblindness, meaning she can't process the world in 3D, and topographical agnosia, which is place blindness. I was really eager to speak with her as I've got a low-grade face blindness myself. If you'd like to know if you're face blind at all, there's a test on Sadie's website. The brain is a wild and wonderful universe, and hers is a beautiful original, that's for sure. And Sadie's also the author of the book, Do I Know You?, available where books are sold. In other news, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism on social media. Find my music in all the musical places. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. Be well, be safe, be love. Here we go. Sadie Dingfelder, welcome to Hey Human.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's so lovely to meet you. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because all things brain interest me to no end. And neurodivergence, neuroscience, neurology, if it has a neuro in the word, I'm in.
Yeah, brains are crazy.
Brains are crazy. Let's start with a little background. Tell me where you grew up and how childhood shaped you, how your family shaped you.
I grew up in Florida. I think that growing up in Florida is sort of like growing up in a lawless land. And so for me, I mean, I've managed to get my driver's license without actually driving or taking the test. I often found myself like kind of doing workarounds to things that other people were just able to do normally, but and I feel like that's made me scrappy. But I think it's a Florida activity too. Like my dad and I would sneak into like a fancy hotel to like use their pool and, that kind of thing.
I think in order to fully equip the audience with this conversation, I usually would lead us to this reveal later, but I think your case is more well-suited, as a better way to say it, more well-suited to say it at the top. You have, okay, I wrote it down so I don't miss any of them because it's a pile. Severely deficient autobiographical memory, meaning you can't re-examine or re-experience an event from your past. You have face blindness, which means you don't recognize faces. Stereoblindness, meaning you can't perceive the world in 3D, which is how most people perceive it. You perceive it in 2D.
Yeah, it's really flat, apparently.
Yeah. And then the other is aphantasia, which is the inability to, if I said, imagine an apple, you wouldn't be able to imagine an apple.
No, I can think about an apple.
Yeah, but not imagine it. Tell me what the difference of that is.
The difference between thinking and picturing something? Well, you know what? It's one of these things where for a long time, I think humans who were curious about this question, it was just based on language. And everyone would sort of end up being like, well, I don't actually see an apple. It's just in my head or something. So scientists just real recently found that this is a real difference that you can see physiologically and also in unconscious sort of reflexive behavior. So the people who can picture things can picture a bright light and your irises actually contract. And not so much for the people with aphantasia. And then also when you picture something, your visual parts of your brain light up as if you're actually seeing that specific kind of thing, which is kind of nuts, right? Like your brain, when you see something, when you picture something, it's like an echo of seeing it for most people. For some people, it's almost as vivid as real life.
Yeah, it's exciting that neuroscience is getting to the point now where they have technology where they can actually map the brain so that they're starting to be able to record dreams.
Yeah, it's so cool. And they can decode dreams. Do you hear my cat? I'm gonna go close
I
my door.
can't, but
Oh, if you can't hear it, then that's fine.
we're a cat friendly show. So
Yeah, but if you could hear my cat, she sounds like she's very like, I don't know what. She sounds very upset.
now is she did she catch a bug? Sometimes cats make funny noises with the bugs.
No, she just yells all the time. She's just vocal. And when we have cat sitters, like I have to like brief them. I'm like, listen, Turtle's gonna yell the whole time. And
Turtle.
that's just what she does.
I love that her name is Turtle. Is she a Siamese?
No, she's a tortoiseshell, like American short hair.
Oh, those are the smartest. I love tortoise shells.
They're so pretty too.
I had a cat in college named Baby Kitty, and she was tortoise. So anyway, back to you. This is now a cat show, which I love. All right. So as a child, that is a wild way to perceive the world. Did you, especially since you are what you are, you know what you know, and you have nothing to compare it to. So at what point was there an awareness that, oh, wait, I'm not perceiving the world the way my peers are perceiving it?
I was about 40 when I had that realization.
A little bit later on the playground.
Like 39. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I grew up thinking that I was like really quite neurotypical. I knew that I was like a little below average on, I mean, I would assume that I knew that I wasn't great at some things like face recognition and like object rotation and space, that part of the IQ test and stuff. And I knew that I was really good at some other things, but I didn't realize that I had this like very characteristic spiky profile where I'm failing at things that other people find to be like trivially easy. And I'm succeeding at things that people find to be almost impossibly hard. I'm going to close my door.
That one.
She's so annoying. I'll be right back.
She's paying attention to me. I love it when animals are named either
other animals.
Other animals are super human-y names, like Frank the cat, or we had a dog named Mighty Mouse and another dog named Bear. And I just think it's funny when dogs are named. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, one time I was at the vet and they called my name and I went and paid and I was like, oh, this is less than I thought. They were calling for for a dog named Sadie. So I paid for someone else's dog named Sadie.
Oh, Sadie's a good, strong dog name. I've only met one dog named Susan, and it was so off-putting.
That's so funny. A dog named Susan sounds all sorts of wrong.
It feels weird, right?
Yeah. What kind of animal do you think would be an okay animal to have your name?
To have the name Susan is such a good question. An osprey.
An osprey?
Yeah.
Like the bird of prey?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like it.
I don't know why that's the animal that popped in my head, but there you go.
They make like an S.
How about you? What kind of animal do you think?
I mean, I've met a lot of cats and dogs named Sadie and grandma's named Sadie. And the only ones that kind of bother me are the people who are like 27 and named Sadie, like Sadie Sink. And I'm like, oh no, they're replacing me.
Yeah, Susan's an old name too. It's not a lot of Susans. All right, let's get back to you. So we're operating through the world and we have no realization that we are a little different than the average bear.
I really don't. But in retrospect, it's like glaringly obvious, but I really didn't have any idea. My brother said, we knew something was up with you. But I really didn't know. And it wasn't until I made a weird mistake where and also I think it was two things, right? I was old enough and like secure in my place in the world enough that I was able to be reflective for the first time. Because I think for like the first 38 years of my life, I was just being scrappy and just moving forward and not looking around, just like tunnel vision. Let's just get this done, whatever this was. And finally, like I had the moment to like have put my head up and look around and think about things for a second. And what happened when I did that is I noticed that I was doing some weird stuff. And the weirdest thing I did was when I was in a grocery store with my husband. I mean, he was my boyfriend then. And I lost track of him for a second. And then I found him again, and he was like getting all this like junk food, and he's just kind of like a food snob, and it didn't seem like a normal thing he would do. So I pulled a jar of generic peanut butter out of our cart, and I said, "Since when do you buy generic?" And Steve, who was actually not Steve, he was a random man, just like looked back at me, just completely terrified. And for one little split second, this man's features actually wobbled in my perception, which I was really excited to learn later that if you zap people's fusiform face area, it makes people's features look wobbly. Like, you don't realize how much your brain is actually composing everything you see. But
Absolutely.
every single face you see, your brain is like cutting it out of the scene almost, and then cutting it in half, sending one half to each of your hemispheres for processing, and then bringing them back together. Yeah, it's like, why would you do that, brain? But I guess that's the way to do it. Most people open their eyes and they think they're seeing what's really in front of them, you know? But if you've had an experience like that, you get a really visceral sense of how your brain is constructing your reality.
They have those glasses what turns everything upside down, and then
Yeah.
it takes a certain amount of time and your brain will put everything right side up again. That
Right.
in my mind, the optic nerve hole where the brain is filling in where the hole is, all of that is fascinating.
Yeah, it's really wild whenever you get one of those little glimpses. It's like seeing through reality almost.
So I feel like all of these things that you experience are in different parts of the brain. So what does that mean? If we were to light your brain up, what would it look like?
You know, I think that what kicked me down the path less traveled in terms of my neurodevelopment, I think it was probably my stereoblindness that is the biggest deal, because your brain combines your left and right eye into a single stream of vision at the very first step of vision when it hits your occipital lobe, which is wild because that means everything downstream is affected. Even things that you wouldn't think should be affected, like color vision. Like, why would that matter? But people don't realize that acuity is just one measurement. Your ability to estimate depth is another sort of thing you can be good or bad at. And as with acuity, the bigger numbers are worse. And so I started out like 2,500, which is essentially like stereoblind. And you know, it's wild though. I mean, neurotypical people have wildly good stereopsis. You can see the depth difference in like the edge of the quarter, you know, like at like an arm's length, which is pretty impressive to me, because to me it just looks like stripes, I think, pretty much. Though it's hard, you know, and the reason we know the qualia is different, like the experience of seeing the world is different, is because there are adults who have learned to see in 3D as adults, and they say it is wild. Like the world just pops out at you like a pop-up book or something.
Yeah.
And it's scary. And some people don't like it. This one woman I talked to, she went backwards on purpose because she felt like it was too scary. And actually, there's a weird disorder called prosometamorphosia or something like that.
For you to say?
Where people, it looks like faces are melting, and sometimes they look like they're being stretched backwards, and turned into like a demon face. But faces are particularly unstable for people with that particular disorder.
Brings to mind the idea that the monsters we've seen in our histories, people who have been accused of all sorts of things, that you wonder if there are those issues at hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Brain is perceiving. So how does a young Sadie who's maneuvering through the world recognize her parents, her kid, you know, the kids on the playground, her teachers?
Not very well. There's some faceblind people that like say they're very good at voices. There was one faceblind child, I talked to her mom, and she memorized all of her classmates' shoes. Mm-hmm. But I think most of the time you don't realize that you're compensating when you're compensating. Mm-hmm. And since everyone just expects you to be able to recognize people, you intuit that baseline expectation, and then you just pretend, you know. So I had reputation for being spacey because I was always like looking a little lost because I couldn't, like, if on a school field trip, like I could only recognize maybe like 2 or 3 people in my classroom. And even though I couldn't recognize like in different lighting, you know, and if someone, Oh my gosh. I had a friend, I didn't have a lot of friends in elementary school and middle school. So I lost one very precious friend because she cut her bangs.
Mhm.
And then I treated her like a stranger, and middle schoolers are sensitive, and she just thought I didn't like her anymore.
Yeah, I try to explain that to people. This is why I was one of the things that made me excited to talk to you is that I I don't know what the scale is, but I know that I have an inability to, I don't know if it's picking out, like I can see your face perfectly fine. I
Yeah.
can say things about you, and all that. If you were to change your hair color, your clothes, your perfume, the way you walk, the next time I saw you, I wouldn't recognize you. And it would take a very long, like I have friends now where, after a year or two, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so and so. But honestly, I don't know if they did something drastic to themselves if I would recognize them right off the bat. So I don't know where that is on a scale.
And the thing that really like sort of kicked me into high gear of exploring what was going on with my brain is when I thought my aunt was my mom. And like they don't really look that alike. And I had just read this study, like babies, really young, like newborn babies, even if you mask their mom's smell, which they did with some terrible like Febreze or something, the babies can visually recognize their own mom. And so I'm like, if I can do it, like, if I can't recognize my mom, my brain is really failing here. And well, I eventually came across the term prosopagnosia, the Latin version of face blind. And and I joined a study, but they wouldn't tell me like how bad I was at first. They put me through a training program. So I did this extremely tedious, intense training program. I can't remember how many hours. I want to say like 30 or 40. It was very tedious, and the first like 5 times I did it, I couldn't understand it. It felt like like literally impossible. Like I was answering at random basically. And I would email the research assistant and say, I don't like, what am I doing wrong? And she would just be like, you need to go faster. And I'm like, what? I'm like, could I measure the little faces on my computer screen with my fingernails? And she's like, no, you can't do that. But then I came up with this sort of system that it was like a sing-songy chant thing that allowed me to like, it's sort of hard to explain, but I came up with a workaround essentially to like beat the test. And my newfound like they did improve. Like my perception improved a lot, but only on paper. It didn't seem to like affect my life in any real way because life is so much harder than like a little like, still face on a computer screen.
Yeah,
Like
people won't stand still and they keep changing their shoes and their clothes and their perfume and their hair.
yeah, yeah.
Test on your website. Your website is very cool. It's
Thanks.
got a bunch of tests to take, which is also very cool. And I find myself also doing that in that I took the face blindness test and I concentrated so hard and I just watched their lips and the shape of
Ooh.
their lips.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, why am I trying to beat a test that's telling me if I have this thing? And I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. And I'm like, oh, I've already got the workaround.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so funny. It becomes like second nature, I think. And it translates to other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be a reporter, but I didn't want to go the normal route where you have to like go work in some tiny, tiny town somewhere. I eventually sort of I felt like I snuck in through the back door of the Washington Post and like got an amazing job.
Incredible. And how did that? I suppose it's one of those things where if every day is a brand new day, it's rather exciting. So when it comes to journalism and reporting, there is a level of I have to remember this thing, I have to reflect back on this thing, I have to know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
How did you manage all of those different components?
Well, maybe in retrospect, this is why I'm not like an investigative journalist. In fact, in my building that I lived in, it was right near Congress, and we had tons of Congress people in our building. And also, we had like someone really important, like the head of Homeland Security at one point. And they would always be talking about things in the elevator. And every time I would be like, oh, I wish I could like eavesdrop and know what they were saying or who was saying what. But I really am not good at that at all, right? I had no idea who these people were. So I gravitated towards writing about, artists mostly, like writing features about artists and other weirdos. And when you're writing about, usually these are fairly distinctive people, like John Waters, not hard to spot and keep track of John Waters. But like one time I interviewed the Kennedy Center president, and then I feel like it was either the same day or the next day, I was at the Kennedy Center to see a show. And I asked her what I thought was a random lady who was behind me in the concession line if she was enjoying the show, and all of her friends started laughing. And then I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah.
I totally understand. Do you believe so? The word neurodivergent gets bandied around quite a lot, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. And people are like, oh, everyone's autistic, everyone's on the spectrum, everyone's got this. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And there seems to be a frustration, I think, that not everyone can be neurodivergent, but I think about the complexity of a human being in general and how the brain functions, which is so complex that I'm guessing in another 500 years, we still won't have it all figured out. So to me, the answer is always, yeah, that makes sense. Anytime anybody says, oh, I have this weird particular quirk in my brain, I think, yeah, neurodivergence makes sense all across the board. I don't know that I've ever met it. I mean, I as well run around with weirdos, but
Yes.
I don't know. Is there such thing, do you think, in your opinion, is there such a thing as a normal, quote unquote, brain?
Well, one quick funny story. My husband has a friend who, for some reason, like had to take a bunch of tests for the military, and he studied for them, and he actually intentionally went straight down the middle. So he actually had like a perfectly normal score, which is super weird, right? I guess the way I think of it is network theory. So this is just like emerging science. So this is not my theory, and it's also not settled. But scientists are beginning to see that neurotypical brains tend to be more hub and spoke network, which is, like an airline would have. So you don't have to make more than one connection. And neurodivergent brains tend to be a more daisy chain. So you might have to make 3 connections. And as a result of that different profile, you end up with this very characteristic profile, like set of strengths and weaknesses, where the strengths are quite strong and the weaknesses are quite weak, because brains sort of evolved with these trade-offs, right? And they sort of found the best trade-off, and that became like the average person. And most people are within, 2 standard deviations of whatever the average is on any given trait. And the people who are out on the tails tend to be out on the tails on like a lot of different traits. Again, because I think one big difference can cause a cascade of other consequences. As a result, like all of our categories are not very good. Like autism, if you are autistic, like there's a really good chance that you also get diagnosed with ADHD. And like, so these categories were created, they just do not actually sort people in a meaningful way. And it would be so much better if people just knew their cognitive profile. Like, okay, like I am sensitive to light, that kind of thing. I think that in the long run, they might find clusters of people, but you know how this is like a morbid example, but like if you get like cancer, they don't just say like, oh, you have elbow cancer. They're like, there's like 20 types of elbow cancers, right? Your brain is like even more complicated. I mean, I don't think there's elbow cancer, but your brain is even more complicated than that. And so in the long run, we might have like hundreds of buckets for different neurodivergent sort of profiles. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm like a big fan of, I've made up a term. it's neurodivergent NOS, which is not otherwise specified. Because even though I am quite measurably unusual, and there are several teams of scientists who really enjoy looking at my brain, I don't qualify for any diagnoses. And that's why I really slipped through the cracks, because my particular suite of problems results in like okay school performance. And they weren't really like tracking whether I was lost all the time or that I couldn't make friends, you know?
Yeah. Also, you're of an age group where they didn't really look into things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I've always loved psychology, and all textbooks would just say like autism, it's a boy thing. And I'm like, guess it's a boy thing. And then it's like, but that doesn't make any sense. I mean, what? It was just all these girls were socialized to be better at passing.
You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I think there is a level of adaptation that happens in neurodiverse brains. It becomes its own kind of superpower.
Yeah.
In order to get through a life that requires, or at least it used to require, a very specific regimen of behavioral pattern, that if you deviate from that in any way, you have to figure out, nope, I gotta fit in right now. I gotta go with the flow right now. I've got to be a part of this system that doesn't spit me out and, throw rocks at me at recess, which, I'm sure you got bullied. I know that I did. So it's really fascinating. And I'm so happy to know that nowadays it's far more researched and accepted, and it's understood more. I wouldn't say it's completely understood. Was your experience developmental? There was not an injury. There wasn't any kind of impactful brain thing.
Like, okay, so in my book, I end up going on this sort of like mystery hunt, because first I find out I'm face blind, and I'm like, okay, but why? Why am I face blind? Because usually it runs in families. And I'm in a family of politicians. Like, these people are really good at face recognition. And I couldn't find anyone else in my family who was also face blind. But I eventually like traced it back to my stereoblindness. And I learned all about how like early vision develops. And if you don't get exposure in your right hemisphere specifically to human faces, like in a critical period, you're impaired at faces for the rest of your life. Yeah. So left eye, right hemisphere. And my left eye was my weak eye that I wasn't using. In adults, at some point in development, your brain does this thing where it crosses so that both eyes are sending information to both hemispheres. But with with babies or small children, it's really like opposite hemisphere and eye. But anyway, and that actually threw me for a while when I was trying to do this research. But back to the original origin story here is that I think I might have been on my way to being totally normal, but my mom gave birth in this like rural hospital, and I think I suffered a little hypoxia. And I hope my mom doesn't hear this, but because she's gonna feel guilty or something. But I'm so happy with who I am. It's fine. I'm glad I had that hypoxia. That's my best hunch. But also, like, it's quite I mean, actually, I know for a fact that some of my weirdnesses are genetic, because my brother also has aphantasia and SDAM.
Okay.
Yeah.
Genetics too. I mean, nurture, nature, nurture, nature.
They're always in conversation with each other.
I wonder if a baby who perhaps prefers to sleep on a particular side, and that therefore that eye is maybe more obscured, and so they're taking in the world around them with the right eye. I wonder if that makes a difference. I'm conjecture. It's a curiosity.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Here we are, adult person navigating the world adult-wise, where it's a little more forgiving, I suppose, than children on a playground. How did you come to navigate your more important relationships?
It's so funny, but looking back at my life, like, I realize that you could make a lineup of all of my best friends and all of my like boyfriends. They are all visually distinctive. They are people who stand out. They're tall, or they're very short, or they have blue hair, or, they're just like, that's my one friend in elementary school was the one black kid in my class.
There you
go. In retrospect, I think that might have been helpful to me. And thank you for being friends with me. No one else would. But I think that I just am doing all these compensations without even trying. And I'm sure there's some very plain looking people who are quite wonderful and very nice, but I just cannot, they are not going to get any real estate in my brain.
You had to put bells on people so that you know where they are.
Yeah, totally. Or name tags.
Or name tags. So let's talk about the book for a second.
Oh, the whole title is Do I Know You? Question mark, a face-blind reporter's journey into the science of sight, memory, and imagination. And that's important because there is another book called Do I Know You that is also about face blindness, and it came out like 2 months before my book.
Oh, for God's sakes.
I know, I was so like freaking out.
Well, okay, so the parenthetical helps to set it apart. What made you decide to write the book, and what was that process like, especially for somebody who it's tricky to reenact or to remember or visualize things? How does one go about writing a book?
So this was another thing I was compensating for without realizing, because if you're a feature writer, you are really going for texture, right? Like I had a story for New Yorker, like talk of the town story, and I knew that they would like need to know everything. So I like what is the temperature of the air? Like what's the texture of the floor? You know, I just and I know this, and I've always known this going in that I'm weak on sensory details. So I always write them down, and it's actually at the top of every notebook. I just write sensory details and to remind myself to write it down. And also in recent years, I've, started taking videos and pictures constantly to make up for my poor visual memory. So that's another thing I've been compensating for without even realizing it.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you are a big journal keeper, because I would imagine it would be quite helpful in memory.
I'm like, unless I have an assignment, unless someone's paying me, I'm just like naturally very lazy. And so when I got the book deal, I started keeping a great journal, but up until that point, it was quite sketchy. And so when I had to reconstruct different things, like including that grocery store visit, Google Maps was very helpful. I would look back at my old emails and my calendar. Like I basically had to be like a journalist about my past self.
It's a different kind of memoir.
I think that a lot of it is was written in the present tense. There's not a lot of past tense in there. It's really more of like a reporting journey where I discover all these crazy things about my brain, and it causes me to recontextualize my entire life.
Are you a big test subject then for neuroscientists? Do you go and have that be a huge part of your life? Do you go into labs and have them poke and prod at your brain pan?
No one's done anything invasive. I guess probably unless I had brain surgery, no one would do this. I am very overrepresented in the vision sciences data, I believe, at this point, because I went to their conference and I was walking around their poster sessions and I was like, oh, I was in that study. I was in that study. There's one graduate student in Toronto who is writing her entire dissertation on me and my family and how I can't find my way around anything. Like my poor sense of direction, which has a name. It's developmental topographical disorientation.
Oh, so we add that to the pile as well.
Oh yeah, I could have given you a few more, but I didn't want to. And that's the thing. If a complex of symptoms gets named or whatever, it's because it's causing practical problems in the world, I guess. But I wonder in the future if everyone has little, GPSs implanted in their brains, that disorder will just disappear.
That's a good question. Would you, Elon Musk talks about the brain implant, terrifying to me, but would that be something that would interest you?
Well, if we were just saying totally hypothetically,
yeah,
I would love to see what the world looks like to someone who isn't face blind, for instance, or to find out what it's like to have any idea who you're talking to at a party. I think that would be really fun. And the technology is already there. There's, all of the Google Glass or whatever, but for very good reasons, it's not, the face recognition stuff is not open to regular users, but security companies do it all the time. And, anyway, I don't necessarily want a world where there's facial recognition all over the place, but if that were to happen, it would be, I think it'd be really cool for me.
What happens when you look at your own face?
Oh, it's so funny. I remember one time saying to a friend, if my twin walked past me, I don't think I would recognize her, because I just I'm not in the habit of looking into mirrors. And so it's hard for me to recognize myself a lot of the time. And in fact, I've apologized to my own reflection before when I got in her space and then I realized that she was me and it was just like a mirror or something.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Boy, it would be wild to put you into a house of fun mirrored room to see how you perceived all the different reflections. I would be very interested in that.
Oh, you know what? I spent hours in the what is her name? Oh, she has a cool name. There's a Japanese artist who does mirror rooms, and I spent so much time in her mirror rooms writing about them. Maybe I was like fascinated because of all the faces in there.
I think she came. If that's the artist, I
Oh,
think
Yayoi something.
yeah. That work was brought to the Broad,
Oh,
and so
cool.
here in LA, and I got to experience that. So, what happens next for you? What's the next half of your life look like? Do you have children?
No children, just
Okay.
cats.
You recognize your pets? Is that transfer to animals, or are animals a different thing altogether?
It's so funny. I mean, I recognize my neighbors by their dogs, and then because dogs all look different, right? There's all these different species of dogs, and it's easy to tell them apart. But you could definitely like switch out like my beloved tortie with like another tortie because they're all sort of brindled, and it would take me a minute to notice, probably longer than most people.
And except for if she didn't scream, you would know right away.
Right? I'd be like, "Why is Turtle quiet?"
Yeah. So what does happen next for you?
That's such a good question. I think that I've really gotten passionate about about like spreading the word about neurodiversity and the fact that there's a lot of people in the world, like, something like 1 in 33 people is face blind, and the vast majority don't realize it because they don't realize how good other people are at face recognition. And it is a wild thing if you're face blind to watch a normal person take one of these tests because they're acting like a supercomputer, and you're like, how do you do that? How do you know that? It's wild because neurotypical people like have a near photographic memory for faces and not for any other type of object because we have a whole chunk of brain that's specialized for faces.
That's what kept us alive. I mean, that's another question. If the brain has developed over time to keep us safe from predatory other humans or other animals or what situations. You mentioned topography being an issue. That how does one survive? The brain must be working so hard to adapt in order to keep you alive because you don't recognize someone who's trying to kill you or a dangerous area of town.
Yeah. What's kind of a little funny is that I wrote a story for Time about people with prosopagnosia who had stalkers. And if your stalker isn't actually like physically dangerous, which is true for most of them, but certainly not all of them. But if you're in the big category, the recommendation is to just ignore them because their whole point is to force interactions. And so this one person I talked to had a stalker who started wearing a bow tie so that he could get recognized by the faceblind person. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Yeah. And then, but in general, like if you just if you fail to recognize your stalker, they get bored and leave you alone. So as long as, other than the severe danger, and also, and the other thing is these poor women, they were all women who I talked to, and one man, I think, but mostly women, they got so paranoid because they felt like they couldn't keep themselves safe. And so this one woman had to get her friend to go grocery shopping with her. Yeah, that's a really tough way to live. I think she eventually moved countries.
When you look at my face, for example, do you have to focus in on a particular, just for the, I mean, we may never see each other again in the world, but maybe we will. And we might both have trouble recognizing each other. But is there something particular about my face that you zone in on in a conversation, or is it just sort of a wash with all the other things going around, like the fish blanket behind me or the clothes in the closet?
I think I focus on faces like a, neurotypical person. I'm just not doing a good job remembering it. In fact, someone was like, I look at whatever my brain is taking in, it just immediately throws into the garbage can. But, your face is quite distinctive and you have these slopey eyes just like my brother does. And I just love them.
A bedroom puppy
Yeah,
dog.
sleepy eyes.
Eyes, yeah. I promise I've been drinking coffee all morning.
I'm sure you're not always sleepy.
But that is very interesting because as I took that test, and again, I encourage people to go to your website because it was really interesting to take those tests. It was fascinating to get a glimpse of oneself. But I did find myself focusing hyper on one particular aspect, and I still missed, I think, 15 or 20 of them. And I don't know, maybe that is rather normal, but I was trying very hard to do well.
Yeah.
In that particular.
If you get into like a face blindness study, they make you take so many different tests because face recognition is so important in our lives that all of us have really amazing hacks. And
Yes.
So it takes a lot of angles to like find the deficit sometimes because there's people who just have amazing hacks. And sometimes, but they're coming up with smarter and smarter studies using computers and things like that to flush us out of the bushes. They're getting better tests.
I'm trying to explain to people, they think I'm just being rude. And I mean, I'm better than maybe I have been because again, you grow up and you learn hacks. But I tell this story about my friend Kathy, who's very distinctive looking. She has this wild white blonde curly hair. It's huge. And she and I had been hanging out and having coffee and lunch, and she's a great person and really connecting for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. And then I was at a music venue and it was dark for sure, but a woman came up to me, very attractive woman, very sweet. We were chatting and I knew that she knew me. I could tell by the language she was using. And yeah. I was like, and my brain was working overtime. I was like, who the fuck is this person? I was trying to look. I didn't recognize perfume. I didn't recognize gait. I was like, who is this person? Who is this person? Well, it was Kathy, but she had straightened her hair.
Oh, that's impossible.
So this huge, beautiful hair that was so easy for me to recognize. I was talking to her for 10 or 15 minutes. And then she finally said something that clicked in it. And I went, holy crap, this is Kathy. And then I knew, and I thought, my God, I hope she didn't, because I imagine from me, like my eyes were trying to search. People know when you don't recognize them.
Yeah, people are so intuitive about that kind of thing. And they take it so personally. Oh. I know, it's really true. And it's like, I am accidentally ignoring people all the time. This one woman or girl, she was a girl at the time, like who was in high school or middle school with me, said that she and I like hit it off a bunch of times and then I just ignored her. And so she thought I didn't like her, And and I heard from one guy who was like, who like had a crush on me, but I ignored him. Like, so I think that at the bottom of this is this really interesting phenomenon where we all assume that, well, like we all have, there's theory of mind, right? But I feel like there's another level, there's advanced theory of mind where you start trying to conceptualize what it might be like to have a mind that's really different from yours and to have a suite of abilities that are really different. And so the reason why people think it's rude is because it would be rude if they fail to recognize you, or that they can't imagine not being able to recognize you. And this has an interesting effect for children because people who are face blind as little kids, everyone knows who they are. They don't know who other people are. So some of us like grow up thinking we're like a little bit famous. Mm. And then the super recognizers have the opposite problem where they recognize everyone. People don't know who they are. So they grow up thinking they're like very forgettable or unimportant.
I know for myself, and I'm curious if this is true for you, that again, it's speaking back to this idea of safety and just the way the brain tries to register predators to keep us alive. Do you feel that it has heightened other things about you, the sense of smell, the sense of understanding someone's gait, the shape of them, their mood. For me, it has created, I think, a deeper sense of empathy because I have to feel people instead of see them. And again, I'm not as far along, maybe, I know as you are. Like I'll see someone, I'm like, oh, that's so and so. It's easier with celebrities, although I mix some celebrities up.
They're all
But
converging on the same face,
they
which is
do look
making
like,
it hard.
yes, yes, indeed. That is so true. But do you find for yourself that I don't want to use the word extrasensory perception, but let's just do it anyway, is stronger? The force is stronger within you?
My dad, early on in this like exploration, my dad said, "You're just not really trying to recognize people." And the thing is, he's a little bit right. It became a feedback loop, I think, early in my life where I would try to recognize people, I would fail, so then I stopped trying and I just started being friendly to everyone all of the time, and that worked better. So I think that my only extra special sense is just like the ability to kind of really connect with a single person that I'm talking to. But the second you've got like a few people and they mill about or a whole party, I kind of am at sea.
Yeah, it does. I guess there is a superpower in absolute paying attention to someone, just laser focusing in on it makes them feel very good about themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. But on the other hand, like I do get easily distracted, so.
Yeah. Let's talk about where to find you, where to find your book. And are you working on something right now? Now that you've finished one, are you moving on to the very next thing, or are you living in the moment of the book?
I have this idea, this wild hair to maybe report like because I had like a really interesting when I was in my 20s and 30s, and people are always telling me funny stories about myself that I don't know. And so I thought it might be fun to go back and like report on these stories, but actually like do it in real time and show people the process and how messy it is. And then make that into embroider that into like a proper book. Though it's scary to do that because then everyone knows what you left out. Everyone knows which version of the story you chose to tell, you know?
Although I love the idea of the Do I Know You being the first book and the second book being Do You Know Me?
Oh my God, that is so smart.
Yeah.
I love that.
You're
So,
welcome
yeah,
to it.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the Do I Know You book title, I love it's like got three kind of layers of meaning. Do I know you? Like, do I know who you are? Probably not because I can't recognize you. But it's also like, do I really know you? Like, do I know what your inner life is like? And I mean, in general, we all just assume that everyone's inner life is like ours and everyone's perceptions are like ours. And we are always wrong, but especially people at the tails, we're super wrong.
Are you experiencing every day anew, or do you retain?
Oh, yeah. So severely deficient autobiographical memory means that my past is sort of recorded as a story in words instead of in images. And it's so wild to me that people are plagued by having to relive like the most terrible moments of their life, but they also like get the good ones, I'm sure too. And I can't do any of that. And I've wondered a lot about like what that I think that it probably does make me more present in some sense, but I don't know. Yeah, I have stories. I've got lots of stories. And that's actually, again, like I've built my whole life around my strengths, right? Like the only way I can remember anything is to turn it into a story. So that's what I do. And that's why I think it's easy. Whereas, people want help like writing or tutoring or something. And I'm like, well, you just write down the story you already told yourself. And people are like, I don't know what you mean.
Isn't that fascinating? That's so cool. I think it's what you experience is its own kind of superpower. You're perceiving the world in such a different way. Again, I don't know, when you pass away someday as an old woman, it would be fascinating to donate your brain to science so that they could look at it and see, how it operates or how it operated.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I mean, I think that I have you ever held a brain? It's such a cool thing.
Have you?
Yeah, I got to hold a brain, and it was really, really neat. I interviewed a neuroscientist from Minnesota. He invited me to come to the lab, which I did, and it was freaking the coolest weekend ever. And I got to hold a brain, and I got to watch experiments being done. It was very cool. It was super cool.
That's cool. It's like sort of stunningly small, right? Like it's like
Certainly, it fit in my hand. It had been formaldehyde. It had been
yeah.
given all the goo, so it was a bit heavier than it would have been, and it wasn't spongy like it probably would have been had it been fresh from the box. It was awe-inspiring because, firstly, because of whomever it belonged to, I thought I was now holding every bit of who they were and could be and didn't achieve and did achieve and all these. It was such a complex feeling going through me, and that I believe in the soul, but the soul has to navigate whatever body and brain they're given at the time. And I have this understanding that there's so much about what the brain is capable of that we've spoken to a lot about today, and that it will compensate, it will find new ways, it will reroute, it will do the things that are necessary in order to ensure the best potential survival for the meat stick it's in.
Yeah.
And all these things were going through my mind as I was holding a brain. So anytime I'm so honored to be able to talk with you, because it helps me understand myself and the world at large. I think it's so important to raise up voices of people who are experiencing this planet in a different way. When you dream, do you see faces in your dreams?
It's interesting because when I can't picture anything right now that I'm conscious and awake. But when I dream, I definitely see images, but when I wake up, they're gone. I can't call them back. And so I sometimes capture them in words. Like I'm like, oh, like I was underwater and there was like a shag carpet of anemones or something. But if I don't capture it in words, like right at that liminal state, I'd never have it again.
Yeah. Do you have journals all over your house so you can write stuff down as you?
I do have that, but what's wild is I never go back and look at it. I just trust that the things that I want or need will stick with me, and the information, everything else is just like, garbage.
If you picked up a journal that you wrote, say, when you were 12 and you read it, would you have an understanding that it's you talking, or would it just be like reading a fictionalized book?
Oh my God, I would love to do that. That would be cool. Writing a journal for your distant future self is not something I've ever really considered doing.
But if you went back and read something that was written by you as a young person, would you have an understanding that you wrote it, or would it just seem like a disconnected other person?
That is just a theoretical question. I don't know. I think that my handwriting is highly distinctive, and I would 100% recognize my handwriting.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to recall the memory. Like if you at 12 said, "Oh, I pet a golden retriever today and got ice cream and did this thing, and my friend Susie did this and whatever," that you as an adult, a lot of people would be able to read that and go, "Oh, I remember that memory." But for you, it would be disembodied, right?
Totally disembodied. People are always telling me things about myself that I did, and I do not have any memory of it. And I guess that would be very alarming to a neurotypical person, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't remember that. I mean, I was in a band and we toured and we had all these like shows, and there's like a record of me wearing a particular outfit or something, and people remember that. And I'm so impressed with how accurate memories often are. And I'm just like, oh, like I remember that dress now, but that's it. I'm like, whatever happened to that dress? I liked it.
That's quite fascinating too. Well, tell people how they can find you. What's the best way?
Oh, yeah. Well, my website's sadied.com, because I don't want people to have to spell Dingfelder. And I'm on all of the socials, and I'm on everything.
Yeah. All right, great. And the book is Do I Know You? And how do they find that book?
You can order it anywhere. It's like my publisher is Little Brown, so they're even in England, I think.
Yeah. So it's all over the place. And I'll put links on heyhumanpodcast.com so that it's easy to find much of what we chatted about. This is going to be a really fun links page on this episode because there is so much. Really quickly, one more time, will you run down all the ways you are neurodivergent?
I'll do my best. I'm stereoblind. That's also known as amblyopia and strabismus. I am face blind, which is also known as prosopagnosia. I am place blind, which is known as developmental topographical disorientation. I have aphantasia, so I can't visualize anything. I actually, there's no word for this, but I don't have an inner monologue, so I can't think before I talk, which I've always been like that. How does anyone do that? And how do you not like get confused all day about what you've said out loud versus what you said in your head? And severely deficient autobiographical memory, which sounds like a terrible thing to have, but it's really it's just like the extreme end of the mnemonic spectrum.
Are you able to lie?
Yeah, definitely. But
Okay.
You know what though? I bet that I would never lie about anything specific because there's literally no way I'd be able to remember it.
Yeah. But for somebody that doesn't think about what they're going to say before they say it, I would imagine it would be harder to come up with a complex lie.
Oh, yeah. And it's quite hard not to just say everything I'm thinking. Putting that little like barrier in was like a big developmental milestone for me that I think came a little late.
Was there something when you met your husband that set him apart that is beyond all this other stuff we've talked about? Because if you can't have the ability to set people apart and distinguish them, other than the little tools that we use just to get by in life for all of us, what was it?
Well, so we met at like a picnic, and then my band was like on tour for a month and I didn't see him. And then when I got back, I just like sent him an email just kind of out of the blue. Actually, it was a Facebook message. And I said, do you want to go see Milk, the movie Milk? And like, honestly, like any tall kind of balding guy could have showed up. Like, and I would have been like, I guess that's Steve who I met before. Like I could have ended up with a totally different Steve, but you know, and even today, like out at the grocery store, or in the town square, or whatever, I lose him all the time, even though he's like 6'4" and like just quite a tall person. With Steve, I mean, what sets Steve apart is that he is literally the smartest person in the world, and he's very neurodivergent, of course. Like he's ADHD, very ADHD,
Yeah.
and yeah. So Steve's got a special aura.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get it. I completely understand that. What was your band's name?
Junior League.
Nice.
Just like the club for women. It was very confusing.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It was so fun to chat with you.
Yeah, this has been really fun and incredibly interesting. And I appreciate your time. And if we ever meet again, we will find each other in a room and say hello.
We'll find each other by waving.
I'm quite tall. I'm 6'1". So.
Oh, great. We could have been friends in high school.
Yes, exactly. That would have been very helpful. Thank you for listening, everybody. And thank you, Sadie.
Thank you. That was so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.